Mortal Online 2 is presented as a hardcore MMORPG where every action comes through pain, endless grind, losing your loot, death with consequences, constant long runs, resource scarcity, fear of leaving the city, toxic conflicts, months of progression only to lose everything in a few minutes. Players are told, this is realism, this is depth, this is a true challenge. But what if we look at it differently? What if suffering here is not a side effect, but the main product? What if many game worlds are designed not for the player's enjoyment, but to extract their time, nerves, attention, and life force? The more a person gets angry, endures, hopes, and comes back after defeat, the deeper they are pulled in. They are no longer playing, they are servicing a system that feeds on their emotions. This idea was vividly and brutally described by Victor Pelevin in the novel Batman Apollo. In it, vampires no longer drink blood directly. They milk humanity in another way, through emotions, suffering, dreams, fear, and inner energy. A person thinks they are living their own life, while in reality their feelings have long become a resource. And when you look at some modern games, especially worlds like Mortal Online 2, you can't help but wonder, aren't they built on the same principles? Here is a fragment from the novel that explains it better than anything else. Methods like these for harvesting life force, Apollo continued, have been known for tens of thousands of years. All that time, the best vampires were tormented by conscience. They tried to ease humanity's suffering. The worst among us, as you can imagine, cared only about squeezing as much money and energy out of people as possible. The clash between those two forces is what you call human history. There were victories and there were defeats. The world gradually became more humane, at least on the surface. I think, I said, that for vampires, profit always comes before humanistic ideals. It does, Apollo nodded, and any emperor of vampires remains emperor as long as he agrees with that principle. The real question is which methods yield more and which yield less. The Leaking Hearts never called for abandoning the M5 extractor. No one would have listened. Their main message was that it was possible to squeeze more from humanity while improving human life at the same time. But is that even possible? Of course, that is the essence of progress. There were many experiments, including social ones. In the last century, they tried producing vast quantities of suffering by building totalitarian societies unfit for life. But around the same time, scientific discoveries made the Great Frequency Revolution possible. I had never heard the phrase before. What is that? The Great Frequency Revolution, said Apollo, was the most radical vampire project of the last thousands of years. What frequency are we talking about? Apollo smiled and patted my neck.
As a Russian poet once said, joy and suffering are one law of the heart. Every cycle of joy and suffering produces a certain amount of M5. So to increase the total volume, raise the frequency, I guessed? Smart boy, exactly. The human brain is capable of cycling through joy and suffering at incredible speed. A person can experience full waves of frustration not once or twice a day, but several times a minute. Vampires knew this long ago. What we lacked was a way to reach those thresholds. Social reality has no script that lets the B-mind spin at maximum RPM. Why not? You cannot start a war every half hour. Even inner dialogue has limits. It is hard to make a man remember every 5 seconds that he is a loser with no money, though your finest minds are working on it. Usually that happens only once or twice a day. For us, more often, I said. Apollo nodded. Perhaps yours is a harsh culture. but still not often enough. So eventually the vampires asked themselves, could an artificial world be created where human consciousness would pass through joy-suffering cycles as rapidly as possible? And what did we invent? Apollo raised an eyebrow. You still don't understand? No, I admitted. Rama, use your head. If vampires invented something and spread it everywhere, you would know it, not as a vampire, as a human. Something very familiar to you, something historically recent, something you are emotionally invested in, something you love. Video games? Bingo! But why only video games? I listed whatever came to mind. Movies? The internet? News? After each word, Apollo nodded approvingly. Exactly right. By their nature, each of these realities is a form of dream, where joy and suffering can alternate at any speed. The character in a film or game with whom the viewer identifies does not eat, sleep, or deal with ordinary life. He does not need to live a full human lifetime to release M5 at the point of death. He can experience death frustration many times an hour. He can die every minute if necessary. He can radiate suffering almost continuously. But games are for fun, I said. People play them for pleasure. Ha! Precisely. That is the trick. A person does not even realize that the main content of video games is frustration. Naturally, we do not advertise that fact. Chaldean psychologists teach that the player enjoys his own invulnerability while watching danger happen to a drawn hero in an artificial world. Would people play games if it were suffering? Of course, suffering is the direct purpose for which man was bred. Sooner or later, he reduces every activity to it. But it's fake. That's the whole point. The brain cannot function fake. A man may consciously know he is playing a console shooter, but every time the controller trembles in his hands and the screen splashes with virtual blood, some large and serious part of him prepares to die for real.
Do you like games? I nodded. Remember one you finished recently, in detail. I recalled some shooter. Apollo closed his eyes. The hero climbs the wall of a castle, he said. You rejoice because you are about to escape darkness and hell. Then the ledge breaks beneath your hands. You fall but survive, catching another outcrop, and begin climbing again by another route, now through tongues of flame. When you finally reach the top, you discover a duel with a giant spider awaits, and beyond that, larger spiders still. There is no victory in that world. Defeating one spider only leads to another. Worse, the bugs left in the game prevent full immersion, adding extra torment by constantly reminding you that you are not really fighting spiders at all, but merely wasting your life in front of a screen. It's true, I said, but I'm not suffering when I play shooters. Most of the time I enjoy it. There are boring moments, sure, but every game is softened, disguised suffering. Suffering hidden beneath a thin layer of sugar. Negative emotion is as necessary to a game as dragging a sled uphill. The satisfaction a player feels only comes from overcoming it. Why do you think the great frequency revolution became possible? I thought, because the leaking hearts raised the other vampires to their moral level? No, because vampires receive more M5 from keeping a man in front of a console for a month with Call of Duty than from sending him once to the Battle of Kursk.
Instead of putting him into one real battle where he dies 100%, we run him through 100 fake battles where his B-mind dies 2% each time. Do the math, the suffering output doubles. But why does it feel pleasurable? You do not feel pleasure while doing it. You feel frustration, anxiety, at best indifference. What remains afterward is a false memory of pleasure, exactly like sex. Humanity loves it for some reason, though there is not 1 second of it worth loving while it is actually happening. He patted my neck again. I see you still don't fully believe me, Apollo said. Fine, tell me, why do most console games lack instant save? Why? Because we force the player to repeat the same route to a checkpoint again and again. It is done specifically to maximize M5 extraction. I nodded. It sounded true. And why, Apollo continued, do they limit mission time, make you finish in 5 minutes, not 1 second more? The same reason? The same. So with 1 page of code, we can milk the player dry, not once, but 20 times in a row. The art of game design lies in maximizing suffering output while keeping the player from dropping the controller for as long as possible. It is an entire science. Yes, I whispered, true, and a good slave always finishes on hard mode. What do you say? Asked Apollo. For a moment I tried to remember what we had been discussing. I never play on hard, I said.
Only the easiest mode. Correct, Apollo replied. You are a vampire, not an idiot. If you understand how games work, you already understand the whole info dump. Info dump? Informational fodder. A new nutrient medium into which we immerse humans from birth. Every kind of sensory stimulation that forces the human mind to generate M5. And why do I understand all of it? Because there is no difference between its parts, games, films, television, the internet, and everything else. None at all. At every level, the same stimulation patterns await you. And the internet? Our most promising direction. You spend much time online? Yes. Then you know already. A person always enters the net expecting to fish something valuable, interesting, necessary from the ocean of information. And what happens 3 or 4 hours later? He rises from the screen feeling as if a herd of swine ran through his soul. He swears never to waste time there again. Tomorrow he repeats the same experiment. How could it be otherwise? The internet is simply a cosmos of games, films, and news, a black sky filled with glowing screens. Man moves from one star to another, always chasing whichever promises maximum pleasure. That is the whole psychology of surfing. Man is a machine, forever moving toward the point of greatest enjoyment, yet what he produces is not pleasure, but suffering. Busy with electronic masturbation, he soon begins running circles through his private cosmos, like a rat forever expecting reward, but more often jolting from electric shock as he remembers he has no money, no future, not even time for this surfing. The entire internet is littered with reminders of that fact. The house always wins. The perfect informational fodder, Rama, is not only completely homogeneous, it is flawlessly fractal. That's inhuman, I whispered. Why inhuman, when not a single human notices? No one objects.
On the contrary, people buy themselves little portable milking machines, so they never disconnect from us for even a second. They pay good money for them. They obediently copy behavioral patterns invented by marketers, so they have something to film with their gadgets. People are almost happy. They believe themselves free because they can choose their own route from point A to point B, though in truth there is no point B at all.